I told you I've had 6 businesses that failed before my first one succeeded. If you're an entrepreneur, you better get used to that feeling. Everything that you're not efficient at, it drags you down and puts you in a lower position. As long as I think it's going to work, I won't let anything stop me.
Hey, welcome back to the podcast. I'm very excited for this week's guest. I have Patrick Grady with me today. Patrick, welcome to the podcast, man. Thank you so much for your time and coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course, man. We jumped on a call last week and we got to know each other a little bit. But for everyone listening, why don't you tell them who you are and what you do? You run an ad business. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, sure. So actually there are 2 Pat Gradys, maybe 3. There's Agency Pat and there's Print on Demand Pat. Agency Pat owns Amazing Ads. I'm the founder of the company. It's 6.5 years old. We focus on e-commerce and lead gen, and we're a full faceted digital marketing agency. So Google Ads, Amazon, Walmart, Target. We do all kinds of marketplaces like Lowe's and Home Depot and Wayfair and other things like that. We do video content. We advertise on YouTube. We help people create content. We help people develop their Shopify stores and everything that supports that. The Print on Demand Pat, along the way, I've been doing PPC for more than 20 years. I actually predate Google Ads. I started doing print on demand. I really love the business as an entrepreneur. And today I have 9 other brands that I sell on Amazon and other stores that are mainly involved in print on demand, but a range of industries.
You have your hands completely full. I think you mentioned you have a total of, 6 businesses? Was it 6?
12.
12. Okay. It was either 6 or 12. So even double that. Wow. Absolutely amazing.
My wife corrected me the other day. She said, "Aren't you merging 2 of them?" I was like, okay. Well, as soon as the merger is done, it's 11.
How do you split your time as an entrepreneur between, how do you even manage that from a mindset perspective, 12 businesses?
Yeah. Well, Amazing Ads is the one I spend the most time on. But for the other businesses, the first thought before I acquire a business or decide to build a business is who's going to run it day to day. Obviously, no human being can spend, 20, 30 hours a week operating 12 businesses. There aren't that many hours in the week. So for each business, there's either a CEO or a manager or a director who largely conducts the day-to-day business and the week-to-week business, to be honest with you. I do run Amazing Ads, although I recently hired a CEO to run the company at the top. So that's it. I think putting strong people in leadership positions is the way that you can own multiple companies.
Yeah, and we talked about... Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say the only way. I don't know of another way.
Yeah. I mean, when you're growing a business, you do just have to find the people to kind of take over, maybe not necessarily what you're not strong at, but just take over certain tasks to free up your time as the owner so you can focus on, would you say it's big picture stuff or just more be more proactive on the business instead of working in the business, working on the business, right?
That's right. And so you have to build expertise in all the different aspects of that business. And it's rarely what entrepreneurs can do is go from one to the next, to the next, to the next. Being nimble is critical, and adaptability is a critical feature of being a successful entrepreneur. But I think of it like, when you build a house, you're going to need someone who can lay a foundation, right? You're going to need a plumber. You're going to need someone who's a carpenter. You're going to need an electrician. There's no way that you can run a business today without having an array, a quiver of experts. Not just one, and not just one discipline, but every discipline. Sometimes, I have some people who do accounting and bookkeeping for my company. They have been with me for almost 20 years. I know when I start a new company, that is all going to be taken care of, and they do such a good job. I don't have to worry about finance and financial reports and preparation and even things like banking, invoicing, keeping QuickBooks in order, right? So once you do have those kind of partnerships and strength under you, scaling them up is a lot easier.
So, Patrick, how would you describe your day to day then as an entrepreneur with 12 businesses and the right people in place to help you manage those businesses? Kind of walk me through what your day to day looks like then.
Yeah, so for Amazing Ads, I love problem solving. I love math. It's an agency, but not the type that you would think of where I'm involved in the aesthetics or the design of banners. I'm much more a statistician. I'm an efficiency expert. And so our biggest clients and biggest problems get my attention. So I still am a hands-on company owner. So it's not like I'm not removed, and you don't have to be a tactician or a technician if you're going to own a company. It does help if you understand all of the underlying work. But I do love to troubleshoot and solve problems for our advertising partners. I mean, I have a deep passion for it. And I love to see it. One great thing about advertising is it's easy to measure. It's not always perfectly measurable, but in so many businesses, the things you do, they're hard to measure. For us, we have so many ways that we can measure the success of advertising: impression, reach, sales, signups, growth of the company, top line, bottom line, those kind of things. And so when you solve a problem and you see the immediate impact that it makes on the business, that's a very rewarding feeling.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit more about the ad business. So, when you're working with a client, kind of what is the first steps you kind of walk through with that client when it comes to putting ads together for them?
Yeah, it's mainly the first steps is this idea of efficiency, right? People have a tendency to be budget-based bidders. We do this in our own lives. How much money do I spend on rent? How much do I spend on my car? How much do I spend on food? But that
100%.
kind of approach, it doesn't build in efficiency. So in advertising and in most things in business, it's money in and money out. That ratio, money in and money out. So you can flip the ratio and define this a number of ways. Amazon people tend to have spend divided by revenue, which is ACOS, or advertising cost of sales. Google people tend to flip the fraction upside down, and it's return on ad spend, or ROAS. But to us, it's the same thing. A 2x is a 50%, 3, 33%, 4, 25%, so on and so forth. Once you start setting goals around those ratios instead of budgets, you are by nature paying attention to efficiency. And efficiency is the key today. If you're wasting money, you're probably taking it from someplace that could have done a lot more damage to your competitors, right? And so, we have an expression here, like we say, starve the losers and feed the winners. It sounds really cold. It sounds mean. It sounds cutthroat. And we are that way about competing. And we know, like our customers at Amazon, for instance, we're going to take apart not only their advertising, but their listing, their photography, their titles, their videos. We even get involved with their shipping, their logistics, their packaging,
Wow.
their labeling. Everything that you're not efficient at is, it drags you down and puts you in a lower position. Everything that you optimize means that you can be competing, among the best in the world. So we don't just look at the advertising, but I would say, you asked me the question, what's the first thing? And what I want to know is this person that I'm talking to, do they want to compete? And do they understand that efficiency, which sounds boring, like, are you talking about saving money, Pat? I don't want to save money. I want to grow my fucking company, and I want to beat and bloody the other guys, right? You have to be efficient to do that.
So, what's your idea of efficiency then when working on a brand new ad for a new customer?
Yeah, so it's going to vary from customer to
Yeah.
customer, right? There are some people who have momentum and they want to capture a lot of profits. There are other people who are brand new and they want to capture market share. However, the absolute position that you're in, where you want your efficiency to be, and let's talk like everyone uses ROAS for a second. So somebody who wants to collect profits, whatever their margins are, let's say they're running their advertising at 5 or 6x. Every time they put a dollar in the machine, $5 comes back. And you might say, well, that's somewhat passive and restrained. It's not if you have a very big brand that is well known and moving a lot. But whatever the ROAS is, and let me go to someone who's very competitive. Hey, I'm new, I'm launching, and I want to go at 1x. At 1x, even if the product were free, it's not. You got to pay your cost
Yeah.
of goods or cost. You still have shipping, boxes, postage, the people who work for you. But at 1x, you're essentially growing your company. But my point is, across all the channels that you participate in, if you have 5x over here and 2x over here, if you think of these as two machines, oh, I have a machine I put $1 in and $2 comes out, and I have another machine I put $1 in and $5 comes out. Well, for God's sake, stop putting dollars in the $2 machine, stick it in the $5 machine, and let the $5 come out. This is the same thing as moving money from a low producing activity to a high producing activity. Starve the losers, feed the winners. If you have two channels and two channels only, and if your margins are the same, net of fees, and you're spending at different ratios, you are being inefficient. You
Yeah.
should have a strategic reason to do so if you're doing that. If not, move money from one to the other so that you're efficient in both.
So I have to imagine that that efficiency isn't apparent right off the bat all the time when it comes to running advertising, right? Don't you have to give things, you got to leave some room for things to breathe to figure out what's working, right?
Yeah.
And what's not?
Yeah, right, exactly. And because if our job is to hit the right ratio, let's again just pick a ROAS. So we're aiming for 3x. That's the goal. And they say to us, Pat, find anything you can that you can hit 3x. Then I need a little wiggle room to fail. I need a little wiggle room to launch new experiments that may or may not be at 3x.
Yeah.
So what you do is you set that 3x, and every day our primary activities are trying to hit that ratio. That's the key to being efficient. And then we put a budget limit, a ceiling, a cap on the spend. So hey, 3x, you can spend $50,000 this month, Pat. And if you're hitting 3x and you start to get near that 50,000, just say so. Raise your hand. We'll go to 70. Right. So putting budget limits in place. And like I said, Jared, when I first meet someone, I want to know, are they going to be comfortable working on this ratio and giving me room to breathe? If they're just going to give me a budget, a flat budget, and say, I want you to spend it all, and I'm not, I'm not too concerned with how much you sell or don't sell, then I feel a lot like I'm working for the U.S. government, where no one cares about efficiency, and I'm budget-based bidding. When I was in the Navy, if we didn't spend our full budget that year, the next year we'd get less. So in the days before the year end, sometimes we would go buy 100 cans of red paint because we needed to exhaust the whole budget. We didn't even have anything to paint. We just had to burn the budget. Anyway, this idea of ratio bidding, ratio budget allocation, it all comes back to being efficient so that you can club your competitors to death.
And I would imagine that setting expectations when it comes to how effective these ads and how long it's going to take can be challenging at time with customers.
It can. And the weird part is sometimes the guys who are the smallest have the biggest appetite for growth.
Yeah.
And usually it has to do with how risk averse someone is. And if you have a lot, you're probably afraid to lose it. And if you don't have much, you're probably not afraid. I grew up poor. I'm not afraid to be poor. I'll take some really big chances on things, because I'm not afraid of loss. I've seen it before. I've done it. The other day when we were talking, I told you I've had 6 businesses that failed before my first one succeeded. If you're an entrepreneur, you better get used to that feeling, because not everything's going to work. Not every campaign is going to work. Not everything you're going to do is going to work. Thankfully, our clients, usually after we've worked with them, they understand that if it can be done, we will find a way. That usually increases their appetite for risk. Hey, let's go try some more things. Let's throw $10,000 at something brand new and see how it works. So we love to do new experiments on new channels. We're running tests right now on Lowe's and Home Depot and Wayfair, a platform called Zorro that I didn't even know existed until my client told me about it. Yeah, so we do experiment quite a lot.
Let's add some value to those that are listening that are maybe a smaller entrepreneur business that's just starting out, but maybe they're looking to grow. They have that appetite and they want to start maybe advertising. What kind of value or insight can you give to those people listening that are looking like, okay, I need to start putting money towards marketing, because if you're not growing, right, at least that's my aspect. If you're not growing, you're failing, right? You got to continue to grow and figure out how to acquire more customers. So what are some of those first steps that you can do as a new business to be effective with maybe probably the limited ad spend you have to begin with?
Right. And it does depend on the nature of the product. And you're actually asking a remarkably challenging question
because it varies from everybody. It varies from everybody, I'm sure.
It does. And so We signed a client recently, and they were on Shark Tank, and they make a kitchen appliance device, but people don't know to look for it. It's so innovative and so creative that so in their case, you don't lead with search. You lead with like YouTube education targeted at people cooking and show them this product to make them aware that it exists, right? Other times we might work with a cosmetic company or a supplement company. Everyone knows exactly what vitamin D2 is, or these different combinations. Like D2 plus K3 is a very common supplement combination. In those cases, you would definitely start with search,
Okay.
right? And that the exploration of this though includes, am I efficient enough outside of advertising to be competitive on search? It's a very challenging environment on Amazon, on Google, as it gets more crowded and it gets much more complicated to run campaigns. The efficiency is needed not just in the ads themselves, but if you think of Amazon as a comparison shopping engine, today it is so easy to compare 100 brands of supplements or 100 brands of whatever it is. Amazon's even better. In addition to comparing the price, you can see the reviews. So in a flash on Amazon, you get to see, is this a quality product and is it a price leader, right? And they all float to the top.
Yeah.
So I think that, this idea that advertising alone, optimizing it will help you win, it will improve your company, but you need to do the same thing with your manufacturing, with your shipping, with your labeling, with your boxing, with asking for reviews. And today there's also this very complicated ecosystem where you have multiple channels, and most people are going to touch 4, 5, 6 of your channels before they finally make that purchase at the end. The science of measuring who gets credit for the sale, I started as an affiliate, and it was always last in attribution.
Right.
Right. That's kind of crazy when you think about it. Right. I remember one time I went to this trade show and I was thinking, okay, I walked to my car that morning. I drove to the airport. I took a tram to the airport. I flew in an airplane. I took a cab. And as I'm walking in, there's a doorman and he opens the door. And here I come walking through the door. If you ask the doorman, hey, why was Pat Grady here attending this conference? How did he get here? What's your study of, the information you've seen? Oh, he arrived here by taxi. It's like, no. Last in is like doorman attribution. It's one of the dumbest things you can do, right? You need to take a look at all these channels, and it's very difficult to figure out what contribution each of the channels made. Thankfully, in paid advertising, you can just turn it off and see what happens. It takes guts to do this.
Yeah.
These kind of experiments, they're a little bit nervy, but if you really want to know whether advertising is contributing to top line and bottom line, then you need to, if you don't turn it off, turn it halfway down, see what happens. Constantly be moving the goals and targets that you're aiming for. If everything is static, that's actually the hardest thing to measure. There's even an idea of profit being maximized at the top of a hill. We speak about higher hill. Like if I make the PPC more efficient, the maximum point of profits would be higher and higher. Sometimes it's hard to tell. If you overbid, you're spending too much per sale. You may have a lot of volume, but your profits start to erode until you're finally spending so much you have a loss. At the other side of the hill, I'm bidding so little, I have so few, right? High unit margin, no volume. Low unit margin, tons of volume. It's the 1 times 3, 3 times 1, but 2 times 2 is 4. The top of the hill is where you want to be. So you say, well, Pat, get out your calculator and tell me if I'm at the top of the hill.
Yeah, that was my next question. How do I get to the top of the hill?
It's impossible to know because auctions are dynamic marketplaces. So what you do is you just pick a direction. I'm going to go one way or the other. So let's say I turn bids up and I'm tending to go down the curve towards the higher volume side. If I turn bids up and my profit goes up, I know I was on this side of the curve and I just moved up the hill. If profits go down, and you can usually feel this right away, dollars going out, dollars coming in, what is the net of it increasing or decreasing? If it increased, you just moved up. If it decreased, you went this way. Well, then go back and keep making moves. There's some good news here, Jared.
Yeah.
The top of this curve is relatively flat. If your peak was at 3.72x, probably about the same at 3.9 and 3.4, because you'd have a little more volume and a little less unit margin, and a little more unit margin, a little less volume. So the top of the hill is not like a peak. It's nice and rounded. It's a good place to live, but you do want to know if you're on this slope or this slope. Those are very inefficient places,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, I could spend a little less and get more profits. The whole point of this is to maximize the profits, and that doesn't matter whether you're a startup, whether you're in growth mode, whether you're trying to sell or buy, whatever it is. Bringing that up, though, you asked me about new clients. Sometimes people contact me and they're getting ready to purchase a company. Before they've negotiated the purchase, they say, Pat, I want you to review the PPC and tell me if it's a train wreck. If it's a train wreck, I know I'm getting a good buy. If you can tell me how much can you improve this PPC and how fast, right? So I belong to a think tank of about 400 entrepreneurs, and they often come to me and say, hey, I'm thinking about bidding on this. I want to bring you in there and take a look at the advertising. And the first time someone brought me in there, I was like, hey, bad news. The advertising is a train wreck, right? The guy says to me, Pat, this isn't bad news. This is the best news ever. I'm like, but you're buying this company. He's like, but you know how to fix this. I'm like, well, most people know how to fix this, But anyway, this idea of what is the value of advertising, how does it fit in for different customers? It does vary quite a lot.
Patrick, when are you working with more large scale businesses? I know you drop some big name companies out there, but do you also work with smaller entrepreneur sized companies
Yeah,
as
well,
well?
I've been managing Busy's advertising for 5 years,
Okay.
so that would answer the big question.
Yeah.
Let's say they are very large, right? We do have clients that spend multiple millions per month on advertising, and they attack many channels. We work with some companies that um, are surprisingly big,
Mm-hmm.
where a month's sales might look like $25 million, that kind of
Yeah.
stuff, which is very impressive each day when you're pulling levers and adjusting spend, how big it is. But Jared, here comes the weird part.
Yeah.
We don't have contracts. We don't have monthly minimums. We don't have base fees. We work because I started as an affiliate and I was used to feeding my family on commissions I was earning from selling products. When I started the agency, I started it as a performance agency. So we charge a percentage of sales or spend depending on what the client's more comfortable with.
Yeah.
And that means because we don't have minimums, we attract a lot of entrepreneurial startup companies, right? Quiet Light Brokerage is the number one seller of online businesses in the United States. We worked with so many clients. I have bought and sold businesses through them that Quiet Light hired us to manage their advertising. So the entrepreneurial spirit kind of lives and breathes at my company. It's not something we're interested in. It's something that we do every day.
That's awesome. And we're going to talk about that, especially your mindset, because I want to dive into like the 6 businesses that failed and how you got to success and
Yeah.
how you managed all that. But one last tidbit of like value information for those that want to learn a little bit more about PPC. A question that I was thinking about is when I think of PPC, I automatically think of, Google, right? Google Ads is
Yep.
probably the most basic form of PPC that people can think of when they're advertising their business. When you go
Yep.
in and you're setting up a Google campaign for PPC, and they've gotten good at the recommendations and having different titles and trying A and B and C different ads. But when you come down to the marketing budget, right? Because their primary focus is to try to get the most money out of you, right? This is how Google
That is their goal. But
makes
yeah.
money.
Yeah.
How correct is that PPC recommendation that Google is giving you? Is it more focused on their profitability, or do you think it's on the low side, high
Yeah.
side when you are looking at the Google recommendation for that that industry for a PPC?
Well, first, let me say that I have a high regard for Google. I know lots of
Yeah.
people that work at Google. We have 3 former Googlers who work for my company. We have clients that were former Googlers. So some of the smartest people in the world are working there. However, I have one way to answer this without insulting anybody
Yeah.
and without pointing at Google directly. Anyone who makes a recommendation for your business who doesn't know your budgets and goals it's a self-serving recommendation, right? So If someone is telling you, I think on this keyword you should raise bids, or I think you should allocate more budget over here, and they don't understand your margins, the goals that you're after, what your objectives are you trying to create profit, increase market share, displace a certain competitor? You know, without knowing what you're aiming for as an outcome, right? Anyone who tells you, anyone, Google's a little bit famous for this because their junior level PPC reps will send you automated machine generated recommendations that seem to make a lot of sense on their surface. But when you ask yourself, does this person actually know anything about my business or what I intend to do with it? If you can honestly say they don't, then you can honestly say those recommendations are horseshit.
Yeah. And that's, I think, where it comes into, I think the most important thing you talked about earlier was look at the money that's going out and look at the money that's coming in, right? If you have more money going out on the ad, but not as much coming in, maybe you need to, take a look at your ad spend and figure that out and dial it back a little bit. Because at the end of the day, Google's looking at the PPC like, hey, you're getting a lot of clicks, but are those clicks turning into actual customers? And there's a variety of things to look at. Your website, where are they going?
Good news on the Google front, though. Yeah. So Google, as you know, they're leading the way in many ways, and their AI and technology and people and the things that they know about you. If I ask you, Jared, you use Google Maps?
Yeah, I mean, I'm huge into Google Maps for my main business, which is a service-based business. I live and die by making sure my business is showing up there.
They know where you are, plus or minus a couple of feet. At least that's what I can see on my Google Maps. I'm logged into several Gmails. I store all my documents on G Drive, right? I'm logged into their services one way or another. When I go home at night and watch my big screen TV, the thing I watch most is YouTube, and I'm logged in there. They know everything I've searched for because most websites use Google Analytics, right? They're using this freemium model to get such prolific data on individuals. Mm-hmm. Today, they're a company you can trust, right? They don't give this data to anyone. They don't sell it to anyone. They probably fear being dragged into Congress yet one more time, but it's there. And they have it, and they know everything you search for, everything you're doing. They know how many companies I have. They know where I work. They know what time I get out of bed. They know what I'm watching on TV. And so when you say, well, the future of PPC, what does it look like? Not what you asked me, but a small company who's trying to run advertising, Google is going to take all of that information they have about shoppers and use it to your advantage. Are they interested in maximizing their profits? Of course. They're a public company. They're going to serve themselves. That doesn't mean they won't serve you well. But when you think about the future of Google, the number one thing that you'll be working on in the future is telling it what things of value are happening at your company. So let me explain. For many years, PPC people have worried about keywords and match type and negative keywords. And they worried about page loading speed and the title of their items that are loaded up into a Google Merchant Center feed that participates in Google Shopping. Google's going to do away with the GMC feed. They scan websites so well, they'll pick up everything on your site. Something changes, they'll pick up the change. Google knows so much about all these people, they're going to get rid of keywords. It's just a matter of time. There were 4 match types. Exact, phrase, modified, broad, and broad. A year and a half ago, they combined these two. If you check your search terms report in Google today, you'll see that phrase match and broad match, your phrase match is matching broadly. These two are almost the same now. Soon they're going to say, hey, the AI understands all of this. There's only broad match. I hear them talking about broad match as a product. And I'll predict that by next year, maybe the end of 2025, they'll say there's no more negative keywords, there's no more positive keywords. Well, how is this black box going to operate if you don't put any keywords in there? The answer is your feedback loop. When you get an order today in e-commerce, you think about the receipt page firing and saying, oh, there's an order. In lead gen, you think, oh, somebody completed the form, and now I have the lead, and there's the conversion. That's actually only the beginning of things for both types of companies. In a lead gen setup, they mature leads. So they send an email. Does it get open? They set an appointment. They sign an NDA. They negotiate an early contract. They describe services and maybe sign a preliminary. Each one of those things is a conversion. You attach a revenue signal to it and jam it back into Google. On e-commerce, they recommend a friend. They link to your product on social media. They buy a second one. They buy a related product. Whatever it is, there's more than the instantaneous purchase. There's the lifetime value. Take that train of signals that happens afterwards, feed it back into Google and the conversions using this feedback loop. And pretty soon the AI, after about 300 to 500 conversions, the Google bidding AI understands the person who's about to click on the next ad. Remember how much they know about that person, what time they got out of bed, where they're standing, what browser they're using, what they did yesterday, what they searched for. The keyword almost starts to seem a little bit
Yeah.
insufficient to describe the needs of the person who's viewing the ad.
Yep.
Yes, people will still do keyword and verbal searches, voice searches, but there's going to be a black box. And what agencies are going to work on is perfecting this feedback loop so that the AI understands the value of everyone who has clicked on an ad and the people who haven't clicked on an ad. That way, let's say in the beginning you're bidding $1 and everyone's getting a dollar click. After 500 conversions, you'll start to see there was a $3 click and a 3-cent click. That's because Google can figure out their AI is doing tens of thousands of correlation studies and figuring out the efficiency, the likelihood that that person's going to convert. The higher the likelihood, the higher the bid. So though Google is feeding itself, at the same time, they're bringing a lot of technology to bear that'll help small businesses. It'll be quite the miracle in about 4 or 5 years when you just point it at your domain and say, I want to sell stuff, and you set a budget. Nobody asked you for keywords. Nobody asked you to create campaigns or ad groups. You need to upload creative, but it's going to find a lot of that creative on your website automatically. Maybe you'll upload videos, and that'll be replaced in 10 years or so.
Yeah.
Anyway, there's a lot of good news ahead for people who use Google. It'll be very easy, and you won't have to pay an agency.
Well, I'm looking forward to that day. Not to not pay an agency, but just how smart Google is going to be, because ultimately, out of hearing all that, what I got out of it is, Google will try to serve itself, but ultimately for it to be successful, it's got to make sure that you benefit too, right? Because if you're not benefiting, they're not going to benefit. So PPC campaigns are effective.
Wherever we run ads, Amazon, Google, Wayfair, they care about the shopper. They don't care about the advertiser. And that makes sense to me in the grand scheme of things. Do I wish that Google would take me out to dinner and buy me things? Yes, but they don't. As long as they make the shopper happy, the shopper keeps coming back. They have a goose that lays golden eggs, and the way to keep those eggs coming is to keep shoppers coming. If the shoppers are there and the shoppers are clicking, advertisers will come. I'm not saying they treat me badly, but there's no reason for them to hyper focus on my needs, right? As long as they serve the person who's searching, everything will work out in Google land.
Patrick, let's talk a little bit about you now, because when we talked last week, I found it so fascinating, again, that you have 12 businesses. Before your first one succeeded, you had 6 other ones that failed. Most people, after 6 businesses, that's a lot, man. That's a lot.
It is.
They would just throw it in the towel. But what's been your drive to keep you going despite those 6 failures, and now what looks to be 12 successes, or as they're going, or at least they're fun because you're still doing them. What keeps you going?
Yeah. A lot of people ask me that question. It is a very interesting question. The strange thing is, this think tank I belong to, it's called Rhodium. There's like 450 entrepreneurs in there. They all have it, this thing, this disease, right? If I ask someone how many domain names they have in their GoDaddy account, and someone says 150, I'm like, oh, I recognize that disease. But let me tell you what I think it is. I love to win. I'm just a competitive person. I've always been that way. And I'm not good at everything I do. I play bass guitar, for instance, and I'm not that good, but I'm always trying to get better, and I love to do it. And I love to, it's easy. I wasn't born with any natural talent as a musician, but I can use YouTube like anyone else. But I do want to dive in a little closer and put some labels on this thing that you're asking me about. So I met this dude named Raj. He's a programmer. He owns a couple of companies. He's exited 1 or 2 as well. And he kept telling me about this word grit, right? And I used to think that I was a person who perseveres, you know. I also watched Dr. Duckworth. She has a TED talk that's fantastic about grit. Um, so perseverance means like in the face of adversity, in the face of challenge, you stay calm and you're just ever present and like you don't give up, right? And I always thought of myself as that I could persevere, that I wouldn't, you know, not quitting as being persistent or, you know, having uh, perseverance. Um, but it's more than that. There's like a passion for it. There's, and Dr. Duckworth says passion plus perseverance is what grit equals. So let me tell you a quick difference between someone who perseveres and someone who has grit. So talking about companies that fail. So let's say we're meeting a group of guys and we say, and girls, and we say, look, hey, the average entrepreneur is going to fail 4 times before they find a success, right? The persevering person would say, well, let's get started. Let's not let anything stop us. Let's keep going. After the second failure, the person with perseverance would say, you know what? I'm not quitting. I'm going to keep going. The person with grit after the second one would say, awesome, 2 down, 2 to go. You know, like they just have a spirit that is indomitable. Like, nope. And it's not that, you know, people always say, does that mean you'll never quit? No, of course. I'll stop anything if I come to the conclusion this is not going to work. I'll change direction. But as long as I think it's going to work, I won't let anything stop me. Nothing. And I think that is a skill that is not an innate thing. I wasn't born with that. When I was young, I was an introvert. There's no way anyone watching this video thinks I'm an introvert. I'm saying severe introvert, way over on the left-hand side of the scale. It takes being an extrovert to achieve. You have to meet people, you have to network, you have to find high quality people to be your allies. You have to find people with grit, people with perseverance and passion. If you don't have that, if you don't make the effort to make allies, you won't succeed. Or I would rate your chances at nearly impossible. It just doesn't happen. I was in Vegas. Since I talked to you, I was in Vegas. I ran into a friend that I met 20 years ago. He was just, I don't think I can say too much about the position. He was the head of SEO at CBS Sports. You can imagine that's an important position. He was hired by a major search engine that no one talks about anymore to bring it back to life, to help bring it back to life.
I have a guess
right?
of which one that is.
this guy and I, we go fishing together. I just love him. He has buckets of grit too, just oozing out of him. From the day I first met him, I realized, and it's wrong to say that, you know, he's a winner. Like I said, I had 6 businesses that failed. He just won't let failure stop him. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of successful entrepreneurs have that same mindset. I have that mindset of like, failure is not an option, right? There is no plan B.
Right.
This is going to work. And if this, you know, doesn't, it's still plan A. I'm still going to be an entrepreneur and I'm still going to have a business,
Right.
whether that's the current business is the business. Failure is just not an option. And I love that. I remember you saying that you just love to win. And I asked you, what's your definition of winning? What's winning look like to you?
Well, I don't remember what I told you. I was at a conference.
You said you had to think about it.
I killed a lot of brain cells between now and then, or then and now. But I would say it is that feeling of achievement that I get when I win, right? Winning in e-commerce or in selling anything online, it's not one thing, right? It's not one skill.
Right.
It takes so much to assemble a winning team, a winning product. When I say I'm winning, to say that in a particular niche that I have a range of products that is dominating, or my clients' products are now dominating, that's a win.
Mm-hmm.
And that makes me feel like I have achieved something special. When you can make progress and so easily measure it. Now, not all clients do we do this, but I'm going to tell you, we have a client that in 3 months we 5x'd their top line without increasing ad spend at all. That is not normal. It's an outlier case, I'm telling you. they happen to sell a product, a biking product. Let's say if you like to ride road bikes across like 10 speeds, people used to say. If you like to ride a road bike, it's a road bike product. Their advertising was just not good. We fixed it, and for the same monthly spend, the exact same spend, they now have 5 times as much sales. And we're not just bidding on name traffic. It's not one of those, those kind of stories. That, when I am like going to sleep at night or getting up in the morning, when I think about that company and how fast we changed the nature of their business, and when I talk to them, how grateful they are for the partnership and the progress, that definitely gets me out of bed in the morning.
That's awesome. Well, I'm not going to take up too much more of your time because it sounds like someone's trying to get a hold of you. But I have to say, like, I love that idea of just like finding what winning means to you as a successful entrepreneur. Because to me, it doesn't necessarily have to mean it's a number, right? People think winning is like, I'm dominating the market, or I have X amount of revenue and profit. Winning doesn't need to be that, right? You mentioned it. Winning can just be a feeling of being successful, and I'm doing good by my clients, and I'm doing good by my employees, or whatever. That can be winning to you. So I think that's a good place to end this conversation for everyone listening. Is just find out what winning means to you.
Yeah, I want to emphasize that I agree with you 10,000%. If you're going to persevere over a long period of time and be passionate about it, step one, determine what makes you happy, what makes you feel, what is driving you. Whatever that thing is, feed that beast, because it'll still be there later.
And that's what's going to keep you going.
Anything else will eventually fade. Yeah, so I mean, you got to stick with whatever drives you, whatever that passion is. It might be winning, it might be something else.
Yeah.
But
so
know what that is, and you'll go a lot farther.
For everyone listening, find out what winning is to you and what you're passionate about, and keep feeding that beast, as Patrick said. Patrick, thank you so much for setting some time aside. I really enjoy getting to meet other business owners and entrepreneurs and just picking their brains about how they go about business, what's kept them going. So I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Awesome. I love talking about it. Maybe we'll have a part 2.
Yeah,
Thank
for
you
sure.
For having me.